Close your eyes and imagine, we are going back in time thousands of years ago, when ancient Egypt was a powerful empire, but also where millions of Jews endured severe oppression. It was a dark time for the Jewish people. They were forced into slavery, toiling under the scorching desert sun. They built great pyramids and palaces for the pharaohs, the kings of Egypt who claimed to be divine. And in the midst of that misery, a terrible order was given. Pharaoh, fearing that the Jews would become too numerous and powerful, ordered the killing of all their infant boys. But in the darkness of the brutality, a glimmer of hope appeared. A Jewish mother, with a loving heart and extraordinary courage, put her little son in a basket and floated down the Nile. The mother hoped that the river would save the baby from Egyptian soldiers. The little basket drifted quietly, among the reeds of the river. And fate pushed it into the hands of a powerful woman, the daughter of Pharaoh himself. She saw the child, her heart was full of love, and decided to adopt. The child was named Moses, which means, the one who was lifted out of the water. From a hunted slave, Moses grew up in a magnificent palace, living like an Egyptian prince, but deep down, he always felt something special, a calling, or responsibility that he could not explain. Let's pause here and reflect, how can a person's fate change with just one small decision? And was Moses just an ordinary prince, or was he born to do something greater? His journey has only just begun. And Moses' life will soon take him from the pleasures of the palace, to the mission of changing the destiny of an entire nation. An encounter with God at the burning thorn bush. Now, imagine Moses, no longer a prince of Egypt. He had left the splendid palace, away from the months of living in luxury. Why? Because he saw the truth, the suffering of his people. An incident forced him to flee into the desert in search of peace. In the land of Midian, Moses lived the life of a shepherd. He got married, had a family, and thought life would pass peacefully. But fate never forgets a chosen person. One day, while leading the sheep to Mount Horeb, which is called the mountain of God, Moses suddenly saw a miracle. In front of him was a burning thorn bush, but strangely enough, it was not burned at all. The light of the fire blazed like a mysterious invitation. Imagine standing there, in front of a scene that the mind cannot explain. What will you do? Moses, with all his curiosity and courage, walked closer. And then, from the flames, a voice sounded, deep, majestic, and powerful, "Moses, Moses." He replied, "Here you are." It was the voice of God, whom his ancestors worshipped, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God told Moses to take off his shoes, because where he was standing was the Holy Land. And right there, Moses received a great mission. God said, "I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. Therefore, I have sent you to Pharaoh, to lead my people out of Egypt." Imagine how Moses felt right now. He, a mere shepherd, is entrusted with an utopian mission, to face the Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the world, to rescue millions of people. Moses was scared and self-doubted. He said, "Who are you to dare to go to Pharaoh? And if they ask me, 'Who sent me?' how should I answer?" God answered, a phrase that has become a symbol of all time, "I am the Eternal." But Moses was still worried. He said that he was not good at speaking, not capable of it. God, with infinite patience, gave him miracles to prove his power. The rod turned into a snake, the hand transformed, and other miraculous signs. In the end, Moses could no longer refuse. He accepted the mission, taking with him the rod of God and faith to return to Egypt, where the destiny of the Jewish people was about to change forever. This journey would lead Moses to the breathtaking confrontations with the Pharaoh, the great miracles of God, and the great liberation of a people. But first, stop to ponder, if you were Moses, would you have the courage to walk in that call? 10 disasters in Egypt. Imagine this scene: Moses, a shepherd, now stands in front of the royal gates of Egypt, where he once grew up as a prince. But this time, he did not return to seek glory, but to face the Pharaoh, a symbol of power and oppression. Together with his brother, Aaron, Moses entered the palace and said, "The Lord God of Israel said, 'Let my people go, let them serve me.'" Pharaoh laughed. To him, Moses was a stranger, and the God of the Jews was nothing compared to the Egyptian gods. But Moses did not come empty-handed. He carried the power of God, and then, 10 terrible plagues befell Egypt. The first calamity: water turns into blood. Moses, at God's command, brought the stick to touch the Nile. Instantly, the water turned into crimson blood. The fish died, the stench pervaded everywhere, and the people had no water to drink. The Pharaoh, though astonished, remained unmoved. The second calamity: frogs are rampant. Imagine, frogs appear everywhere, in the house, in the bed, in the food. Their cries echoed throughout the night and day. This time, Pharaoh seems to have softened his heart and promised to let the Jews go. But when the disaster passed, he broke his promise again. The third scourge: mosquitoes and insects. The whole of Egypt was plunged into chaos when mosquitoes and insects appeared in large numbers, biting people, causing immense suffering. Fourth calamity: fly bites. Flies fly all over the sky, polluting everything. But the miracle is that these calamities only befell the Egyptians, and the Jews in the Goshen region were still at peace. The fifth calamity: cattle disease. The plague caused the Egyptians' cattle to die en masse, but once again, the Jewish livestock survived. The sixth plague: pimples. The bodies of the Egyptians were covered in painful pimples, which made them unbearable. Seventh calamity: hail. A huge hailstorm, accompanied by thunder, destroyed crops and destroyed homes. Pharaoh began to recognize God's power, but pride prevented him from subduing. Eighth calamity: grasshoppers. Swarms of black locusts filled the sky, eating everything left on Egyptian soil, causing people to starve. Ninth calamity: darkness envelopes. For 3 days in a row, darkness was so thick that no one could see anything. The final calamity: the death of the first child. This is the most terrible calamity. All the firstborn children of the Egyptians, from the children of the Pharaoh to the most lowly of men, died in one night. Only the houses of the Jews, which had been smeared with the blood of the sheep on the doorframes according to God's command, were preserved. The Pharaoh, in the end, could not take any longer. He ordered the Jews to leave immediately. They left in the night, carrying with them hope and faith in a free future. But their journey is not over. Ahead lies the vast desert, the vast Red Sea, and the toughest challenges still await. Will they be able to maintain their faith to advance to the Promised Land? The journey across the Red Sea. Imagine a large crowd, hundreds of thousands of Jews, with their luggage in a hurry, leading their herds of cattle, stepping out of Egypt in the light of a hopeful future. But they had no idea that this journey would test their faith to the end. When the Jews left, Pharaoh seemed to have changed his mind. He could not accept the loss of the huge workforce that had served Egypt for so many years. With his rage surging, he ordered the army to gather, prepare tanks and soldiers to pursue. Imagine that scene, the chariots rolling, the hooves of horses, the screams of soldiers echoing through the streets. And then, in front of them, the Jewish caravan was suddenly confronted with an insurmountable obstacle, the vast Red Sea. In front is the sea, behind is the Egyptian army. They turned to Moses, "Why did you bring us here? Is it to die in this desert?" But Moses, with absolute faith in God, said, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, for you shall see the salvation that God brings." He held up his cane, and a miracle happened. The wind blew hard throughout the night, splitting the seawater in two, forming a dry road in the middle. Imagine, two towering walls of water on either side, and a wide road leading directly to the sea. The Jews walked, one by one, through that miraculous path. The wind whistled, but their hearts were full of faith. The Egyptian army refused to stop. When the Jews were almost out of the sea, Pharaoh ordered his soldiers to rush into the waterway. The chariots roared, the horses' hooves slammed into the ground, but as soon as they were in the middle of the sea, God commanded the sea to turn back. The walls of water collapsed. The entire mighty army of the Pharaoh was engulfed in the raging waters. And when dawn came, the Jews stood on the other shore, seeing the bodies of the Egyptian soldiers drifting, their hearts filled with fear and gratitude. They sang the song of victory, praising God who freed them from slavery, who divided the sea in half so that they could live. But this is just the beginning. Ahead is a long journey in the desert, where they face unexpected challenges. Have you ever wondered, if you were one of the Jews of that day, would you have had enough faith to step on the road in the middle of the sea? And after the miracles, will that faith last forever in the harsh days that follow? Events at Mount Sinai and the 10 Commandments. After crossing the Red Sea, the Jews continued their journey into the desert. However, the desert is not an easy place. The sunburn, hunger, and fatigue began to test their patience. Many in the group felt discouraged, even doubting whether they would really be saved. But God does not abandon His people. When they were hungry, God gave them manna, bread that fell from heaven every morning. When they were thirsty, God told Moses to hit the rock with a stick, and water flowed from it. With each passing day, the Jews learned to rely on God's guidance and power. After 3 months, they arrived at Mount Sinai, a majestic, soaring mountain, shrouded in clouds and majestic silence. Here, God called Moses to the top of the mountain to entrust him with an important task, to give the 10 Commandments, the sacred code to guide this people. Imagine this scene, the whole of Mount Sinai is covered in a dense cloud. Thunder and trumpets echoed everywhere. The ground shook, frightening the Jews below. Moses, with courage and obedience, went alone to the top of the mountain, stepping into the midst of God's brilliant light. On the top of the mountain, God spoke and carved the 10 Commandments on 2 stone tablets. These are not just ordinary laws, but a covenant between God and the nation of Israel. The 10 Commandments include: 1. Worship God alone, not other gods. 2. Do not make idols or images for worship. 3. Do not abuse the name of God. 4. Keep the Sabbath and sanctify this day. 5. Respect for parents. 6. Do not kill. 7. Do not have an affair. 8. No theft. 9. Do not bear false witness. 10. Do not covet other people's wealth or spouses. When Moses returned to the mountain with the 2 steles, he saw that the Jews, who had just been rescued from Egypt, were in chaos again. They lost patience as they waited for him and even cast a golden calf for worship. Moses, in a fit of rage, smashed 2 steles and sternly reminded them of loyalty to God. But God is merciful. After the Jews repented, Moses went up the mountain again to receive 2 new steles. This was the beginning of a strong covenant, laying the foundation for the moral and spiritual life of the nation of Israel. Ponder. There are times in life when you are like the Jews, impatient, and easily discouraged. But the story at Mount Sinai reminds us that we always have the opportunity to do it again, to regain our faith and walk on the right path. The end of the journey. After receiving the 10 Commandments, the Jews continued their 40-year journey in the desert. It was a time of great challenge, not only physically but also mentally. This people must learn to abandon slavery, build absolute trust in God, and prepare to become a free people, worthy of the promised land. Along the way, they faced many difficulties: lack of food, water, internal conflicts, and even the loss of faith in Moses and God. But God never forsakes them. Every time they stumbled, God used miracles to guide and teach them, from the pillar of cloud that shaded them by day, the pillar of fire that guided them by night, to the miracles that protected them from their enemies. Still, there were people, including Moses, who could not enter the promised land. Moses, who led the nation through many difficulties, made the mistake in a moment of anger when he slammed into a rock to get water instead of just speaking at God's command. Because of this, he was only allowed to see the promised land from afar, but not to enter. At the end of the journey, Moses stood at the top of Mount Nebo, from which he could see the whole of the promised land, the land of Canaan, where the Jews would settle down. With gratitude and contentment, Moses blessed his people and died in peace. His successor, Joshua, continued to lead the nation across the Jordan River into the land that God had promised. The journey is complete. But most of all, it is a journey of faith, maturity, and the spiritual transformation of a people from slaves to free people. Meaningful lessons from the story. 1. Faith to overcome all trials. The story of Moses and the Jews is a testament to how faith in God or in good things will help us overcome seemingly insurmountable trials. Whether facing the Red Sea or the harsh desert, faith is always the guiding light. 2. Patience and obedience. It took the Jews 40 years to reach the promised land, a journey that should have lasted only a few months. This reminds us that all good things take time and patience. Obedience, like Moses' obedience to God, is also the key to achieving a great goal. 3. Forgiveness and the opportunity to do it again in this journey. The Jews betrayed God many times, but they were always forgiven every time they repented. This shows that kindness and the opportunity to do it again are always there if we really want to change. 4. Leadership is not just power, but sacrifice. Moses is a leader who does not seek benefits for himself, but spends his life in the service of the nation. He accepts sacrifices, faces criticism, but always puts the interests of the people first. 5. Law is the foundation of prosperity. The 10 Commandments are not only a set of religious laws, but also the moral foundation for a stable and developed society. It reminds us that moral values are an indispensable guideline in life. 6. Hope in adversity. Despite the pain and oppression, the Jews held out hope for a better future. This encourages us that, in all adversity, there is always light at the end of the road. The journey of Moses and the Jewish people is not only an ancient story, but also a living example of the power of faith, courage, and perseverance. So what lessons have you learned for yourself from this story? So together we have gone through the whole journey of Moses and the Jewish people. This is not only a story of liberation and faith, but also a lasting lesson in patience, sacrifice and loyalty to core values. If you find this story meaningful and inspiring, don't forget to leave a like to support the channel. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss out on the next story, where we will discover more meaningful lessons from history, culture, and life together. Thank you for taking the time to follow. See you in the next video.